Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. I hope the week's gone well. I was listening to the central bank governor of the Bank of England, Mr. Carney, yesterday, and I couldn't help feeling he was the only person who was articulate, intelligent, and telling it how it is. And then I saw a tweet from a lady called Catherine Pope. Well, there's one sailor left on the ship, but he's not sure he can save the passengers. And I tweeted, frankly, the governor of the Bank of England is the most sane, articulate and intelligent voice post-BREXIT, and he's not an English voice. The pound fell sharply on Thursday, snapping a two-day rebound. Last trading at 133.09, but got much lower yesterday. And Carney was saying the central bank would probably cut rates this summer. Put up a chart of the sterling of cable, and you can see the moment he spoke, we had a sharp fall. Very interesting piece I came across in the Paris Review called Maji, Moto. Maji is water in Kiswahili. Moto is warm, the hot water, by Courtney Fitzpatrick. And it's a lovely piece. She spent a lot of time in the Ambassador. And she says, she starts off in 2009 or 2008 and carries through. And she's describing a time of drought in September 2009. The sky keeps filling with clouds. A goose down comforter shields this piece of earth from its sun, and one fish-belly cloud hangs low and swollen. We shiver. How can these clouds not bring rain? I took a photograph in the Ambassador, which I've forgotten about, which is of an ostrich in the foreground and elephants in the background. And you can see, I took this in the Ambassador. And then another photograph I took of the evening in the Ambassador, and there's a sort of lake there. It dries up and becomes a swamp. It dries up. And in that article that I was describing by Courtney Fitzpatrick, she describes how zebras, for example, get stuck and they just die, basically. They can't move in that very lake, which I took a photograph of in the early evening. And then I was listening to Queen's Don't Stop Me Now and thought to myself, that's really a song for a Friday. I like this photograph of Nairobi by Tintse, and this photograph of Lamu, the awesome sunrise, by Wazi Fazi. The Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh will be attending the Psalm 100 service at Westminster Abbey this evening. As I told you before, I used to attend Westminster Abbey regularly every morning, point of fact. Political reflections, it's not just a Donald Trump thing, there's more to it than that. Rodrigo Duterte is the newly appointed president of the Philippines, and he's seen here walking behind outgoing President Benigno Aquino ahead of the swearing-in ceremony at Malacanang Palace in Manila. And of course, he's part of this new strongmen leadership that we're seeing. People unhappy with the leadership they've got at the status quo, and voting in folks like Duterte, who has a fairly robust attitude towards crime. 3 ISIS suicide bombers caught on CCTV, smiling before attacking the Istanbul airport. It's really mind-boggling to think that they are so brainwashed to believe that they're going to be greeted with all these naked women or whatever. It is terrible. Boris Johnson won't seek to succeed David Cameron as Prime Minister. Ally turned nemesis, how Grove forced Boris Johnson to surrender. Boris Johnson chose London's St Ermin's Hotel for what was meant to be the launch of his Conservative leadership campaign for its associations with his hero Winston Churchill. For it was here that Churchill set up Britain's wartime special operations team. But when Johnson turned up, it was not to deliver a Churchillian call to arms, but to run up the white flag. The victor of the Brexit campaign was now the vanquished, his hopes of becoming Prime Minister in ruins. With rumours swirling that Mr Johnson was considering pulling out, one of his supporters implored him march to the sound of gunfire. Some 25 Conservative MPs had gathered in the hotel to cheer him on, but grew increasingly anxious as their candidate failed to appear. When he did emerge, Mr Johnson initially sounded like he was pitching to become Prime Minister. Then the bombshell, as his wife Marina looked on, the former London mayor declared, in view of the circumstances of Parliament, that person cannot be me. Michael felt that he didn't have the grip and focus needed to be the Prime Minister of the country. If you can't assemble a team, then that is a serious problem. And indeed, he went from favourite to non-runner in the race to become Prime Minister. And I think essentially how he reacted over the weekend had a lot to do with that, because here we were, he'd fought, to Brexit, and suddenly he's given that exact situation. He had to come out guns blazing with a plan, and he appeared without a plan. And I think that's ultimately the problem. Look at this front page of the Scottish newspaper, The National. This was posted by Jamie McGeever. Social networks could predict the next Brexit. The failure of polls and bookmakers to predict the outcome of the Brexit referendum will push the financial sector, which relies on accurate information, to search for alternatives. Some claim they obtained good results from scraping social media, which may have been the best way to predict the June 23rd vote result. Brevin Howard Asset Management, co-founded by billionaire Alan Howard, reportedly reduced risk ahead of the vote after using artificial intelligence to study social network data. Its $16 billion macro fund gained 1% on the day. Bershinsky says the publicly available social network data on elections don't appear to be very serious. Most of the information involves counting tweets or posts that mention a certain candidate. And he talks about how you can mine it. We do quite a bit of mining of that exact thing for companies and also for ourselves to analyze what the mood swings are. And I really think it's a preeminent early warning signal. But sifting the signal through the noise is the challenge. International markets, UK 10-year bond yield sinks to a new low of 0.88%. Can you believe that? Isn't it extraordinary? The UK can borrow 10-year money at less than 1%. And when you think of the scenario right now, no leader, it's fascinating, isn't it? It really speaks to, I think, what I used to call an arrhythmic market. Let's move to the currency markets. Euro 111.06, dollar index 95.79, Japanese yen 102.53, Swissy 0.9759, the pound 133.03, the Australian dollar 0.7481, India rupee 67.455, South African won 1146.21, the Real 321.34, Egyptian pound 8.8864, South African rand 14.70. Dollar index 93 remains the key support. We're considering go above that for now. Let's see how things play out from here. Euro dollar 111.07. I feel it would trade weaker, but currently is sort of being held up, particularly on the euro sterling trade. UK's FTSE closed its highest level since August as Bank of England signalled another rate cut. Look at this Japan 10-year bond yield, which is even deeper now in negative territory. EU bank assets to GDP, which is interesting, shows that the UK is very beholden to the financial markets. Barclays shares have plunged 26% since last week's vote to leave the EU. Jess Staley came out on Bloomberg with some comments. We don't sleep with our stock price at this level, so the CEO said, at a significant discount to book value. It was not helped on Friday or Monday, and we need to correct that. Tough one to correct. Lawrence McDonald. London is essentially a levered hedge fund, he says, with 64 million people. off to the side. Gold surging, last trading at 1333.45. Remember, we crossed 1350 not too long ago, and that's probably where we're headed again. Gold and silver jump as stimulus bets make them Brexit's winners. Gold climbed for a fifth week, silver surged to the highest in September. Silver jumped as much as 3.6%. Prices have soared 8.4% just this week. Look at silver go, said Eddie van der Walt. Have a look at his graph. Crude oil up and down. Brent playing around with the $50 level. I like this. Leadership Forum discussing on different styles of leadership appropriate for the 21st century. And look at the photograph that they posted. Venezuela mess prods China to reassess Africa lending spree. The threat of Venezuela defaulting on Chinese debt is putting pressure on Beijing to reassess how easily it doles out money to commodity-dependent nations, especially those in Africa. Low oil prices ravaging Venezuela's economy. Xi Jinping's pledged $60 billion in aid across Africa over the next 3 years. What we learned from the Venezuelan case is that China should be more cautious and sophisticated about its overseas lending and investment. Compared to Latin America, Africa holds greater strategic significance for China, and there'd be more at stake if things go wrong. That's an interesting point. More than $86 billion of loans sent to sub-Saharan Africa between 2000 and 2014 helped China build enormous diplomatic clout and secure raw materials to fuel its economic boom. Bloomberg Commodity Index has recovered since the start of the year. Prices remain at 15-year lows. A barrel of oil is trading at around $48, less than half of what crude cost in 2014. Take Angola, like Venezuela, the African petro-state faces more difficulty paying off debt, much of it from China. It was the region's largest recipient of Chinese loans between 2000 and 2014, getting $21.2 billion, according to an April report by the China-Africa Research Initiative. Meanwhile, Moody's cut Angola's credit rating 2 notches to B1 and lowered its outlook to negative in April, citing the oil price slump. The International Monetary Fund has offered Angola a $4.5 billion loan and assistance restructuring its state-owned oil company. Add to that political uncertainty, President Dos Santos may be setting up his billionaire daughter Isabel as a possible leader after his planned retirement in 2 years. China's more experienced now, Lin said. It now considers a risk index when making funding decisions, more careful about the terms of loans, asset evaluation of investment projects, and also political security of the recipient countries. That's the important point, because much uncertainty stems from unstable politics. China has grown more cautious behind the scenes, and one former Chinese diplomat stationed in Africa now works at a state-backed research institution. It's increasingly withdrawing money and workers because of financial and security risks, although such moves are not publicized. Another lesson underscored by Venezuela has been China's reliance on incumbent regimes, important point, to maintain its relationship. Should the opposition succeed in efforts to recall Maduro, to defeat him at the polls, China could find itself relying on an unfamiliar government to repay at least $65 billion in loans, hedging against the prospect of political change by establishing ties with a wider range of political players. Raises its own awkward questions. It could clash with China's oft-stated desire to stay out of the internal affairs of nations. These are my conclusions. The Chinese loan book is now severely underwater. Furthermore, the point about the Chinese bet on incumbency in a time of maximum upheaval is also a challenge to manage. President Dos Santos, I'll put up a photograph of him, he's now telling the IMF his country wants to end loan talks. That's an interesting development. No longer wants to continue talks with the IMF about a loan. Rice said at the fund's regular press conference in Washington, said that his government only wants to continue dialogue on the IMF's annual assessments of the Angolan economy. Look, I think this is very interesting. He's playing hardball, but I don't think he's got much of a hand to play hardball with. probably could not face the forensic audit. But this is like the John Mahama case in Ghana. There is one number Dos Santos will have to die eventually. That number is Madame Lagarde. But evidently it will only be done with him kicking and screaming. Let me put up a photograph of Madame Lagarde, Hannah and myself. She is a tremendous individual. In January, I said there's no Hail Mary pass coming for the commodity producers, and from Abuja to Luanda, from Lusaka to Johannesburg, the denouement is still ahead of us, and I still hold that view. August 2015, I was even much more apocalyptic, and I said oil-based economies are going to contract, currencies which have already collapsed are going to be routed, and Greek-style austerity will be the order of the day. The meltdown is coming. Then we put up a photograph of President Nicolas Maduro, found from his Twitter feed. An Angola court on Wednesday freed 16 young activists, including a well-known rapper. They were in a book club and accused of rebellion. So that's at least seeing some sense. Congo's Kabila calls for voter registration, warns on meddling. Called for the start of the voter registration process. It must be remembered once again that Congo is a sovereign nation, he said. Warned of untimely and illicit foreign interventions in the internal political affairs of our country. Thanked his security forces for their work in extremely difficult conditions in defense of the nation. On the 6th of June, I was writing a piece about fight for the street, and I said then it was his birthday. As a birthday boy, Kabila is constitutionally barred from running for the third term. Katumbi had set out his stall and looked like a formidable adversary. Put up a photograph of Kabila with President Denis Sassou Nguesso, who I think might well be his father-in-law. Going back to the 6th of June, I said in fact the numbers were building and Katumbi must have been thinking that this might just turn into a tsunami. Put up a photograph from both and a link to Katumbi's Independence Day statement. And then I said Kabila outwitted Katumbi by removing him from the street in the Congo entirely. Might well prove a cleverly administered technical knockout. It is Independence Day today, and Seven Sur tweeted a photograph. South African all share up 3.01% this year. Dollar rand 14.70. Gold supporting the rand now. Shopping in South Africa, buying on credit is so nice. Talking about the massive queue that snaked through the first Starbucks shop south of the Sahara, winding out of the door and down the block. It greeted the American coffee chain's boss, Howard Schultz, when he visited the Johannesburg store for the first time recently. I've been to many, many Starbucks openings around the world, Mr. Schultz marveled. I've never seen a line like this after a week of our opening. South Africa has cleared AB InBev's takeover of Sadmila. The Egyptian stock market is down 0.91% this year. The Nigerian all-share is up 3.34% this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 10.4% this year. Africa Confidential has a blog item about Brexit, the storm that's hitting the markets and trade everywhere. And it's saying analysts expect Africa's biggest economies, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Kenya, to be the worst hit, as they were following the global credit crunch in 2008. Kenyan officials worry that already difficult trade negotiations between the East Africans community and that of the EU could be held up further by the decision to leave the Union, and that's the big problem, keeping Africa on the front burner. As Europe dives into a period of infighting, according to a veteran diplomat in London, African governments may see their best course of action would be to reinforce relations with Asia's big economies, China, India, Japan. Coming to Kenya, I had a morning meeting with Joshua Oigara. He said many things, but what I liked particularly, he said, is we want to sharpen the sword of the markets we are in. KCB share price is badly oversold, and I expect some positive news from this point to lift it back to the 40 level. Kenya's economy grew by 5.9% in the first quarter. Nairobi all share down 3.5% this year, but snapped a losing streak to close up 0.92%. NSE 20 is down 9.9% year to date, but snapped a 6-session losing streak yesterday to close 0.32% higher. New York Times is a story, the brazen disappearing of a witness, a taxi driver, and a well-known human rights defender is considered far beyond the norm in this country. Then I'll leave you with Britain has been charged with murder in Kenya, granted bail. This is the story of selfies and a gun going off. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Wishing you a fantastic weekend.